Well, welcome everybody. I can see that some individuals are still coming in. We're super excited to bring you our latest in our partner webinars. And in this case, we are live from the Pantanal in Brazil with James Lewis and Mario Haberfeld, who I'll introduce in just a minute. Um, and they're actually standing outside, so the background you see behind them is real, not artificial. Um, a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Although participants are muted, we welcome your questions, and you can enter them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, just to the right of center. And you can enter those questions at any point, and then we'll come back to them later on in the discussion. So please welcome. And finally, I just want to add a personal note that a year and a half ago, our then board member and Brazilian national Luis Barroso took me to the Pantanal, and it's the first time that I had ever been there and seen the spectacular wildlife and the incredible results of the project, which many of you helped us to launch way back in 2013 in the Pantanal. Luis was Brazilian and loved wildlife, but in particular birds and bird photography, and was disappointed that we hadn't done any projects in the Pantanal since 2013. And so he took me to the Pantanal in part to persuade us to to relaunch our Pantanal program, which we were thinking about doing in any case 2 years ago. And of course, that was spectacularly successful, as we're going to learn. Luis died about a month after we got back from Brazil, which of course was a great tragedy for his family and actually for the world, given his extraordinary leadership. But the Pantanal program that has come together since is very much a memorial to Luis and the small part we can play in his memory. So I'm happy to take a moment to say that before we start. Thank you. Let me start by asking Liz to show just two maps and give everyone an idea of where we are. And then I'll turn over to James and Mario. So this is South America. South America is seriously big. Brazil itself, just Brazil, is larger than the lower 48 United States. So we're talking about a huge area here. Many of you contribute to our program in the Brazilian Amazon and the Amazon more generally. You can see the 9 countries of the Amazon here. We're working right now in 7 of those 9 countries. And just below the Amazon, you can see the Gran Chaco, which is a dry forest. We have several projects there. And also the Pantanal, which is the world's largest floodplain. I was just looking up on Gemini, and the Pantanal is approximately the size of Washington State or Missouri in the United States. It's absolutely vast. Next slide. In orange, the outline in orange on the right is the Pantanal wetland. And this gives you some idea of the geography of the different places we'll be talking about. The bright green within the orange outline are areas which are protected for nature already in one way or another. The small orange dot that Liz is pointing to now is our 2013 project with Panthera, which was really the first private conservation area in the Pantanal and led the move to protect the wildlife of the Pantanal and turn it into a world-class ecotourism destination. And you'll see that's been extraordinarily successful. Panthera continues that work, and the yellow shape just to its left is our second project with Panthera, which we're just launching now. And then below that, you see the larger yellow shape, and that is our very large and very ambitious project with Mario and Onçafari that we're going to be hearing about. And you can see the little orange bits inside. Those are some of the individual parcels within that larger project that have already been successfully purchased. I think this is an old map because I think they're more than that. So that gives you some idea of where we are. And with that, I want to just introduce, and Liz, you can turn off the slides, thanks. I just want to introduce James and Mario. So James Lewis, who many of you know, leads all of our conservation efforts at Rainforest Trust, having been part of our team for 9 years. Before that, he worked at Conservation International, WCS, and Rewild, and he brings to our conservation programs quite extraordinary commitment, integrity, professionalism, and drive. Under James's watch, Rainforest Trust's impact and footprint have grown unrecognizably now to so that right now we have over 57 million acres of critical habitat already protected and more than that in progress. So, James, I'm always grateful to you for everything you do, but it's great to have you here,
Thank you.
and especially in the Pantanal, where you've never been before.
No, it's exciting to be here.
Um, Mario Haberfeld is the founder and leader of Rainforest Trust's partner Onçafari, a Brazilian NGO pioneering management and ecotourism in some of the country's most spectacular wild places, including the Pantanal. Previously a well-known Brazilian race car driver, Mario lived and worked in Africa, where he was impressed by the role of wildlife tourism and conservation there. And he has pioneered bringing that model to the Americas. And we're super excited to have you as a partner, Mario.
Thank
Um,
you, James. Great to be here with you all.
Great. So James is going to talk a little bit about his visit to the Pantanal and his impressions of the wildlife and the conservation opportunities and challenges there. And then he's going to pass on to Mario to talk in more detail with slides about the Takari Wetlands project, which we launched with Mario a year and a half or so ago, and which proceeds well. And then we'll have plenty of time for all of your questions. So please do go ahead and put them in the question and answer box as soon as you like. With that, over to you, over to you, James.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. And good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everybody that's on the webinar today. It's great for you to join. Thank you so much for coming. And thanks for so many of you who have supported us over the years. That impact that James was mentioning at the beginning is because of all of your support. So we're deeply, deeply grateful for that. So yeah, we're here in the Pantanal. I'm here with Mario. He's been showing me around, making sure that I get to see lots of incredible species. We arrived at the Santa Teresa Ranch, which is where we are today, yesterday. And Mario will tell you more about where we are today a little bit later. But just to give you a sense of the scale here, we're on a piece of property here that is about the size of Dallas. So again, just the scale of conservation opportunity we're talking about here is vast. So I arrived in the Pantanal about 3 days ago. And this has been on my list of places that I've wanted to visit for years now. And I'm sure that's the same for many of you on the line as well. The Pantanal's really come into public awareness over about the last 10, 15 years. And a lot of that is driven by the idea of this being a place where you can see jaguar. Now, of course, many of us who've gone out looking for wildlife wonder about, are you really going to see these species? Well, within 30 minutes of being on a boat, we'd seen 4 giant river otters and jaguar. So it really lived up to the hype. And the following 24 hours, we saw capybara, more caiman than we could possibly count, 2 species of monkeys, so the black and gold howler monkey and an endemic, semi-endemic capuchin monkey. And then well over 100 species of birds. So really phenomenal wildlife, really seconds to nowhere else I've been. So that's been really, really...
Which was your favorite, James?
Which was my favorite. There's been a lot of really good birds. I'll say the jaguar just because Mario's here, but no, there isn't a favorite. It's been incredible from start to finish. And the giant anteaters we saw were pretty amazing.
Oh, wow.
It's just been absolutely phenomenal. So everything you could possibly want to see, I've seen within the first 24 hours of being here. But what's really interesting about the Pantanal is it's not the same across it. We've talked about the scale of the Pantanal here, but it's made up of 11 different broad habitat types or ecoregions. And I don't think I was quite aware of just how diverse the Pantanal is. When we took off yesterday from the Panthera site, that first polygon that James pointed out, to come to here today, we must have flown over 3 or 4 really vastly different sites. And just looking around here, we've got some dry grasslands over behind us. We've got a big lake with big open like reedland areas. And then behind us, we've got this mountain range, an absolutely stunning mountain range that has dry forest. So just within where we're looking right now, there are three really broad, distinct types of habitat. And the thing about the Pantanal is it's been a working landscape for the last 400 years. There have been cattle on the Pantanal, and we can see a few around us right in the back. But it's been a really important part of shaping the Pantanal. And I think one of the things that I've learned over the last few days is that the Pantanal is really dynamic. It's dynamic because of the people that live here, the Pantaneros, and the cattle that they raise and how they interact with the environment. It's dynamic because of its engagement with fire and how fire interacts with the area. And of course, the water. We've talked about this being the biggest wetland in the world. And I saw a map earlier today that shows the water flowing through the Pantanal during the course of the year. Now, all of this is great, but there's a lot of things that have changed in 400 years. The types of cattle, so Mario was telling me about the types of cattle that are brought here and how that is impacting the Pantanal. So agriculture is changing, but also the fire regimes are changing and the water's changing. So with climate change, we're seeing a much drier periods in the Pantanal. I think 4-year drought we've just come out of. So if we were here last year, it would be much drier than it is right now. So we've got a lot of things that are changing within the Pantanal, but of course that's also driven by what's happening outside of the Pantanal. So the water from the Pantanal comes from the mountains around it, including the Amazon. So we've been talking a little bit about what are the conservation initiatives that need to happen in the Amazon to protect the Pantanal. And so a lot of our work that we're doing with our Brazil Amazon Fund is helping to support that work, so helping to protect what's happening outside the Pantanal. But then we've also been thinking a lot about what needs to happen inside of the Pantanal. And so James mentioned the trip that he went on with Louise and how that helped to spur a lot of work that we've been thinking about. And one of those things being working with Panthera to develop a strategy and think about what are the opportunities for growth. And Mario and his team have come in and really helped us think about how do we scale that. And so now we're looking at a number of opportunities to really get vast protection across the Pantanal. And by that, it's not just in one or two of these habitat types, but across, so we can get a really good representation and protection across the Pantanal. And with that, I want to hand over to Mario because he's the guy we really want to listen to. So Mario, over to you.
Thanks, James. Thanks, other James. Too many James in one call. But it's a pleasure to be with you all here. Thanks for joining the webinar. It's great to be talking to all you guys straight here from the Pantanal, from Santa Teresa, a place that's very dear to my heart. And I'd like to explain to you guys a little bit more about Onçafari and what we do here. So Liz, thanks for putting on the slides. So I think we can move to the next one. So I'm Mario Haberfeld. I'm the founder of Onçafari, and I'm used to saying I feel like a very lucky person. I have two passions in my life, and I've been able to work on both of them. So I started my life as a race car driver. I raced for 20 years. I lived for a long time in the UK, racing all the way up to Formula One, and then moved to the US where I was racing Indy cars. So after 20 years, I thought I had gone through enough risks, and it was time to devote my time to my second passion, which is working with wildlife here in Brazil. So when I've been going to Africa since I'm 12 years old. I go back every year. I really enjoy going on safaris, learning more about conservation. And when I stopped racing back in 2008, I wanted to work with wildlife, but I'm not a biologist, a vet, or a scientist. So I didn't know how to do that. And I decided to travel all over the world to learn more about conservation, know more what was being done in different parts of the world. And I've been to many places, seen pretty much any animal you can imagine, at least those that you can see in the wild, from gorillas to tigers, panda bears, polar bears, and so on. But my inspiration came from from the Sabi Sands in South Africa, where they did a project 50 years ago or so, where they habituated leopards so people can see and go on safari and see these animals in the wild. Our challenge here was doing the same, develop ecotourism and making jaguars viewable by people pretty much as lions and leopards are seen in Africa. So we started in 2011, habituating these jaguars to the presence of vehicles. We brought all this know-how, let's say, from Africa. We brought trackers from Africa, guides from Africa to teach us how to do it. Obviously, we had to do some adaptation. Jaguars although they look similar, but they're quite different from African leopards, and the environment is completely different. So we've been working now on this project for 14 years. It grew a lot, and now I think our mission is a lot more than jaguars. So our mission is to conserve Brazilian biodiversity through the protection of natural areas and the socio-economic development of local communities. So apart from ecotourism, which is how we started, we have 7 other branches, let's say, of Onçafari, from environmental education, the social part where we work with indigenous people and riverine people as well, scientific projects, fire prevention and combating. I'll get more into that, but that's the biggest risks we run here in Pantanal in particular. With advocacy, trying to convince governments to create wildlife refuges. That we've done one in the Amazon already, and our project here is about another park here in the Pantanal. With rewilding, we were the first people, the first group that managed to successfully put jaguars back into nature, train them, the ones that come from zoos, train them how to hunt and be wild again. And our forest area, which is buying big parts of land, preserved land, and creating huge wildlife corridors. So nowadays we have an impact in almost 5 million acres of land. We own almost 300,000 acres of land, have 18 bases across Brazil, working in Pantanal, the Amazon, Cerrado, and the Atlantic Forest, almost 100 staff, and currently monitoring about 350 jaguars. So that just gives you guys an idea where our bases are. We're here right on the west of Brazil in the middle. That's where Pantanal is. And just a little bit more of Pantanal. I think James mentioned before, but Pantanal is the smallest biome of Brazil, the most preserved biome in Brazil. But despite being the smallest, you can still fit Austria, Switzerland, and Belgium inside. So it's small in Brazilian terms, but a hugely important biome to be conserved. And it's been suffering lately with climate change and everything that's happening. Over the last 30 years or so, Pantanal has been drying. It's estimated that it dried about 60%. Like James mentioned, we had a 4-year drought. Thankfully, this year we have had good rains again, and fires has become increasingly a bigger problem. So last year was one of the worst years for fires here in Pantanal, with the big drought that we had. It was almost 15,000 fire outbreaks detected. And even this place where we stand today suffered a lot. About 60% of this place burned last year. Thankfully, the vegetation is somewhat adapted to fire. The problem is the frequency and the intensity that the fires are coming right now. So this new project we're doing, I'll get more details to you guys, but that's the map of where we're doing the project. You can see even here where it's probably the wettest area of Pantanal, even around this area where we're forming a new state park has burned in the past. We're looking forward to going there tomorrow, showing James this spectacular place that Rainforest Trust is helping us develop this project. And this project, so it's called the Taquari Wetlands State Park. So that's here in the middle of the Pantanal, like I said, one of the wettest areas of the Pantanal, which actually happened 25 years ago because of silting of one of the biggest rivers here in the Pantanal. It started to accumulate sediments until the river got so shallow, and the river came out of its banks and flooded an area of around 1.3 million acres. And that never dried again. So it was a big ecological problem. A lot of trees die. It was a big social problem. People had to abandon that land. Like James mentioned as well, the biggest economy here is cattle ranchers, and nowadays that land is not suitable for cattle ranchers. But 25 years later, with no people there, nature thankfully always rebounds. This is a spectacular place full of wildlife, crystal clear waters with islands where land mammals can live and thrive. So it became a very important area to be preserved. And we went to the governor of the state of Mato Grosso do Sul, where 2/3 of the Pantanal is based, and proposed to them, why not making a state park here? It would be a great social project because we would have to buy land from these people that went bankrupt and nobody wants to buy their land now that's wet. And it would be a great project for the wildlife that's abundant in the region and a way to save it or preserve it for the future. The government came back to us. They said they agreed in doing a 326,000 acre park, but they would put around $12 million to do the park, and Onçafari had to match that to make it happen. Thanks to the help mainly from Rainforest Trust and Bobolink and the WIS Foundation, we managed to secure this funding. Pew also is Pew Charitable Trust is also helping with all the studies that needs to be made. And we've been buying land. The deal is that we buy half of the park, the government buys the other half, and we donate to the park and create this new state park, hopefully by the end of this year. So it's the first partnership that Onçafari is doing with governments in a large scale. And I think we're very happy about it to be able to save such an amazing place. That park, it's there on the screen. That says proposed Taquari Wetland Park. We've been buying land, but the whole point is to connect all these areas that you can see on the screen, including the Pantera area, which is more or less in the middle of the corridor, and land that Onçafari owns right far northeast of this map. This will be a 3 million acre ecological corridor with NGOs owning land, private individuals that set their land under easement, state park, indigenous land, and national park. So it will be a huge corridor, and it's a great project to save a very important area of the Pantanal that holds pretty much all the species you can see in the Pantanal, you can see here. We're safeguarding this area for future generations. So from hyacinth macaws, we saw some here at Santa Teresa, but tomorrow we have a trip to where the park's going to be. We're hoping to see many more of them. It's the largest macaw in the world, a fantastic animal, very, very strong beak. It's the only one that can eat the acuri palm nut that we have in abundance here in Pantanal. We also have the marsh deer. That's the largest deer we have here in South America, as well as the tapir. The tapir is the heaviest land mammal we have in South America. So it's like a mix between an elephant and a rhino in terms of looks. So it's like a rhino with a little trunk. And the idea is, again, to protect that. As far as Onçafari with our partners, we have already bought and closed 65,000 acres of land. We have another 75 under contract, 15 under negotiation. So I think we're pretty much there, about 95% of our goal there or thereabouts to be achieved. And we hope in the next couple of months to be able to, to say to the government, look, we've done our part. Let's speed this up and get this park going. So we're very excited about that. That's just showing right the parcels of land, and I think on the next slide you can see all the names of the land, the ones we bought under negotiation and closed. But like I said, we're pretty close to achieving our goal. And obviously, an important part of this is working with the local community. There's a lot of people living by the rivers here, so we've been doing interviews, working with them. I think in the future, one of the ideas is to have ecotourism projects involve the community so they have better jobs nowadays. Unfortunately, they live off catching small fish to sell to fishermen, not a very profitable business, let's say. So we've been doing all the studies and interviews with the local people and involve them in the process. We're also doing all the technical studies that are necessary to create a state park. So we assume that responsibility, instead of leaving to the government in order to accelerate that, we're supplying all these technical studies to the government. And as I said, we're very happy and think very close to achieving the goal we set out a year or so ago. This is just some camera traps we have in the area. You can see the jaguar. That's how Onçafari started. Also, just show you guys a camera trap of a tapir. Like I said, like an animal that is a mix between many animals, and one of an ocelot that had hunted a bird. So this is just to give you guys a feel of what we've been doing here, how the wildlife looks. And in the end of the day, our whole goal is to increase the resilience of the Pantanal, try to slow down climate change, promote tourism, and work with the communities, giving them more benefits and better opportunities. I think this is a map that shows the whole Pantanal and what the potential is saving land. This whole corridor to the north we talked about. The green part is already Bolivia, but a lot of parks there as well that can connect and make huge connections and create huge wildlife corridors. And I think, in a nutshell, trying to be stick to my 15-minute slot here.
All right, go ahead.
I hope it's gives you guys a feel of what we're trying to achieve here. Thank you very much.
Mario, super
And
inspiring.
maybe I can just say, this has
Please.
it's been so great coming here with Mario and seeing the work that they've been doing. And it's been a really exciting opportunity for Rainforest Trust as well, because we've never worked in a situation where we've been able to match philanthropic donor funding at such a high level with a government. And so that one-to-one match that Mario was able to negotiate with the state has been really phenomenal and enabled us to create a protected area twice the size of what we would have been able to do if we were just funding land purchase. So it's a really, really cool model, which is one of the things Mario's great at, right? Coming up with these new innovative models to deliver on conservation. So great working with you.
Thanks. And it's been a pleasure, I think, working with Rainforest Trust. It's the first time we're working together for the last year and a half, all the support we've been getting. And I'm really grateful to Rainforest Trust, all you guys, for supporting us as such a special place in the Pantanal, the place that holds more water in the Pantanal. In the future, who knows what's going to happen, but this place will always be the wettest area, and this is what Pantanal is about. So thank you very much.
Well, we're not letting you off because we've got lots of interesting questions coming in from participants. Let me start by zeroing in on this question of land purchase. And I know that the Takari project, you're purchasing the land, but then you're going to donate it back to the state government to be matched by them one-to-one and then create a new state park. And I understand Onçafari is going to be involved in helping to manage that park rather than leaving it only to the state. Is that right?
Yeah, James. So far, before this project, we've been buying land both in Pantanal and in the Amazon. Every time we buy land, we create an endowment fund to make sure that land has the necessary funds to be protected forever. Obviously, we do other sustainable things like ecotourism, try to get more income and possibly buy other lands. But the land that we buy, in theory, it's protected forever. This is, like you mentioned, the first time we're going to donate land to the government. We feel now it's a good opportunity. We have a good governor here in Mato Grosso do Sul. He's in fact a biologist, so he cares about nature. He put us this challenge. You guys helped a lot. We could match the challenge, and part of the plan is to have a small endowment within Onçafari, but specifically to help manage the park. So every year we would see what's more needed in the park and make these donations. And we want to be involved in the management somewhat. I think Brazil has some great example of national parks that are very well run, but we also have a lot of examples of state parks and even national park that's completely run down. So we want to make this like a new model of parks in Brazil, where an NGO helps participate in the management of the park. We're building towers to detect fire early. We have people already there managing the area. And yeah, we're looking forward to working with the governor of Mato Grosso do Sul and making this, an example to be followed, and hopefully many more actions in that way in the future.
I mean, I have to say, as someone who spent a lot of my conservation career in Africa, that's also a model that's really been pioneered in Africa, where NGOs partner with governments to co-manage protected areas. So I think it's just great to see you spearheading that in Brazil.
Thanks. Yeah, no,
Let me follow up with James. So
So I'm
James,
distracted by a pair of hyacinth macaw that have just flown right there. Sorry,
I
I'm back
think
with
I
you
think
now,
we did
James.
actually hear the
Did you
call
hear
that
them?
time. Just
Okay, I'm easily distracted. Sorry.
no, please be distracted. In fact, distract us. Absolutely. Um, but I was going to ask, so all of these projects in the Pantanal, the one we did a long time ago, the two currently, they're all land purchase projects, but only about 20% of our projects at Rainforest Trust these days are land purchase. And elsewhere in Brazil, when the work that you're spearheading across the Amazon is almost entirely not land purchase, but designation of either traditional protected areas or indigenous territories by government. Why do you do designation in one place and purchase in another? And why purchase in the Pantanal, and what are the kind of pros and cons?
Yeah, it's a great question, particularly when you look at the cost of doing purchase, right? It's really expensive compared to doing a designation project. So there's got to be really strong justification there. And I think we look at it in a couple different ways. One, it's the only option, right? And often we can do very small targeted land purchases like we do in a lot of the Andes, where purchasing a 300-acre parcel might end a road being go into a large area of forest. So it's really strategic purchase there. Then there's other places where it's the only strategy. And I think that's the case for the vast majority of the Pantanal, where how much of the Pantanal is privately owned?
Yeah, 97% of the Pantanal is privately owned. Yeah.
So if you want to get something created here, you either need to get the owners to agree to put their land in conservation or purchase it and put it into conservation. And so within the Pantanal landscape that we're looking at both of those options. But there will have to be a core component of protected areas that are purchased. And once we get that core, then we can think, what happens outside of the boundaries of that protected area? How do we work with communities to get new agreements, whether there are other effective measures for delivering on conservation that are perhaps community agreements, or are community-based protected areas. But right now, we've got to focus on getting that core area secured.
So different strategies in different places.
Yeah.
Super interesting. One of our participants asked, if Onçafari hadn't purchased this land, Mario, what would have happened to the area?
Yeah, I think it's a big risk. Maybe not an immediate risk. There's two risks: an immediate risk and a future risk. The immediate risk is that we actually bought some land, only 6,000 hectares, so maybe 15,000 acres or so, back in 2023, because when people left this area 25 years ago, nature rebounded, which is great, but now there's no one there. By being no one there, we started having hunting, which is illegal in Brazil. We started having illegal fishing. People catching animals for trafficking, like the hyacinth macaw that just flew here. I think it's a good example of that. So that's why Onçafari decided to buy, quote unquote, a small piece of land there to show that now someone is looking, there's a presence, and I think things changed a lot already. The future risk is that the same way scientists say that the same way that this river spilled over, let's say, one day this river is going to find a new path. They can't say if it's going to happen in 10 years or in a million years, but it will happen. This land will eventually dry again, and it will be all back to cattle ranching. So I think given the opportunity, the low price of the land compared to the rest of the Pantanal, and being both a social and an environmental project, and being able to connect all of that to the whole corridor we're trying to form with other players here in the northern Pantanal, I think it's it's a fantastic place to be involved, and yeah, one of the most exciting projects we ever participated in.
And maybe I can add, so the Panthera project that we're just launching the second phase of right now, which is another project we're doing in close partnership with Bobolink and the Weiss Foundation, a road runs adjacent to two of the properties that we're purchasing. And if those properties weren't purchased, there's risk of encroachment onto the side, people moving into those properties, and then getting a fish burn effect where lots of roads come off that. But also the potential of the road being tarmacked, a bridge going over into Mato Grosso do Sul, and just continue to develop. So by getting the right property, strategic parcels, you can stop development that'll harm the wildlife and the ecosystem, but also get that concrete conservation model in place.
Great. Great. Super interesting. So we have several people asking about the fires, not surprisingly. Last year, I guess, as you say, was the culmination of a 2 or 3 year global El Nino event associated with a 4-year drought right across the Amazon basin. And I guess you had record fires in the Pantanal, and the headlines were really disturbing. People talked about half of the forested area of the Pantanal burning, and so a bunch of questions from attendees about this. One asks, oh, these things are moving. Sorry. One asks, well, I've lost it, but how did the fires get started in the Pantanal? And is it generally from outside or is it generally internally?
Yeah, I think the quote unquote good news here is that we have no criminal fires in Pantanal like you get sometimes in the Amazon and even had around São Paulo last year. But all the fires that started here in Pantanal last years were man-made, but by mistake, let's say. So one big fire that we had close to another property we have, one of our partners were building a school, and the truck that bringing the material to build the school got stuck in the sand because it was very dry. And instead of the guy calling for help, he kept going, trying to get out. And then eventually the truck caught fire, explode, and burn, I don't know, 1 million hectares of the Pantanal. In this property in particular, we had 2 fires. So that's to answer if it's come from inside and outside. I would say both, because this property here has about close to 50 miles of riverfront of the Paraguay River, the main river here in Paraguay. And one of the riverine people from the riverine communities, he saw a beehive, stopped there, put fire to scare the bees away and get the honey. But the Pantanal was so dry, he probably did this all his life, but now with the Pantanal being so dry, he lost control. He was, worried that he was going to be arrested or something, so he just ran away instead of calling anyone. And by the time people noticed, the fire was too big to be put out. And also we had this property is right on the border with Bolivia. So there's the Amolar mountain set here that divides Brazil from Bolivia, and we had one of the fires came from Bolivia as well. So I think the Brazilian side is not too hard. It's just a little bit more of education with people that things that were done in the past, can't be done anymore. Pantanal is drier, so I think that's the good news. The fires that come from outside, it's a harder uh, mission to work, but we're now working closely with Bolivia and trying to uh, do conjunction management. So because we can't have fires coming from there, same way it would be very bad if fires happen here and go there. So.
And what's been really interesting, both when visiting the Panthera site and the site that we're at today, is I hadn't realized just how important these conservation units are for responding to the fire. So where we are today, there's a landing strip, and at the end of the landing strip, there's a giant swimming pool full with about 750,000 gallons of water. And so when there are fires here, these conservation units, these conservation bases are used for the fire crews to come in and then respond to fires in the greater Pantanal. So something new that I learned over the last couple of days.
Yeah, so this pool that James mentioned, it was just constructed after the fire is another way we're trying to combat that. So we made a deal with the fire department that they were going to use this area as a base for air tractors, these airplanes that throw water from from the plane. So that's why we built that. But we have towers to monitor. We have private fire brigades, all the training and everything. So much so that we had to create a whole front within Onçafari to deal with this problem. So nowadays it's probably one of our most expensive fronts, but in the end of the day, everything we do, if it burns, it all disappears. So we're really putting a lot of effort into that.
Great, great. And does that briefly, are you more hopeful that when the next El Nino comes along, you can hold the line on this?
Yes, I think we had experiences where a fire started within our properties. Where we are right now, it's not Onçafaris. Let's say a friend's property, so we don't manage this. But in our areas, we have had fires that started by lightning and things like that. And every time it started within our properties, we managed to put it out quickly, because the big thing is detecting the fire early so you can put it out, so you can get people there quick and put it out. If you let it go, I can't tell you, but I don't know, 10 hours, 20 hours, it just gets so strong and so big, then it's pretty impossible to put it out. So I'm very confident that fires that starts in our areas will put out. The problem is when they start very far from us and there's no infrastructure there, because then it keeps growing, growing, and growing. And that's why we're working with the Bolivian side in this property. So if it starts in their side, hopefully they can put it out quickly. Yeah.
A number of people are asking about ecotourism. Is it a problem? Is it the solution? Is Onçafari allowed to open tourism lodges? Is it possible for people to visit the lands that the park that you're creating? And in due course, a number of people are sort of asking how they can go to the Pantanal. For that, I think we can provide some follow-up information afterwards. But Mario, what would you say?
Yes, I think in the future, one of the plans in the park is to have ecotourism, to be able to show people how spectacular that place is, and again to work with local community. That's a key area that for us. But that's how Onçafari started. So in a different part of Pantanal, where I'm also taking James in a couple of days, it's called Caimã. That's where Onçafari started 14 years ago. We did all this process of habituating jaguars. So they used to see jaguars twice a year. Now we see jaguars over 1,000 times a year. And pretty much everybody that came over the last 5 years saw at least a jaguar in the wild. So I think it became the most well-known place to see jaguars by vehicle, pretty much like a safari in Africa. And again, it's a great way for people to help to come to see these places, generates jobs and help the local people that don't have a lot of other alternatives except cattle ranching. So, which is not not a big employer for women, for instance. So that's why one of the reasons we really believe in ecotourism, that you can involve the whole population and make the jaguars more valuable alive than dead, right? I mean, you can imagine with cattle ranching being the main driver, economic driver in Pantanal. Like I said, it's illegal to hunt in Pantanal, but I also told you guys the size of the Pantanal, impossible to police everything. So with ecotourism, you can show people, that the jaguar can improve the lives of many families, and it's not this big problem for cattle ranchers that it's made out to be.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So a number of people are asking about relations with communities and their impacts. First, in many parts of Brazil, we are directly empowering indigenous people to gain rights to manage their traditional lands. I guess in the core of the Pantanal, most of the indigenous people are already gone. The land was taken over by landowners from outside a long time ago. But I guess there are some indigenous groups around the edges of the Pantanal.
And
Can
that,
you tell us a little more? And do you have any
yeah,
relations with them?
Yeah, there's not a lot of indigenous people left inside of the Pantanal, like you said, in the border of the Pantanal, but there are a few. One of them, which is a big ethnicity, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure how you call it, it's called the Bororo people. We own a land neighboring one of their communities, and we even when we bought that land, we created an endowment fund to support that land in perpetuity, and we created a social endowment fund to support them. So we've made many actions over the last 3 years, more or less, that we've been working. We created, helped them to create their own NGO. Now they can apply for grants, and they've been successful last year. We brought people from the same ethnicity in a different part to this community that they had lost the art of arty crafts or so. So now the women are back doing that and able to sell and support themselves. So we're doing a lot of different actions to help support them, and a few of them even work in our area. So also creating jobs, and I think this is key. To make all these projects succeed, right? If the communities are not involved, it's going to be very hard to keep it long term.
No, super interesting. Several people are also asking about the cattle in the Pantanal. You had mentioned that the cattle have already shaped the landscape to some degree. Can you tell us more? Do cattle harm the ecosystem? Um, and what is the future of cattle in the Pantanal?
So cattle's been here for about 400 years. Yeah, it does shape the ecosystem. I would argue that it's not a problem. In some ways, the cattle saved the Pantanal. I think it has been a way of people making money out of their land with cattle. Otherwise, they would have found another way, and I don't know, planting sugar cane or soybean, which then would be a disaster. And if I compare with other places in South America, they are similar to Pantanal and didn't develop with cattle. They developed mostly with hunting, which obviously, it's a lot worse. So there's an argument to say with no cattle would be better, but a few cattle nowadays, I don't think it's a big problem. And furthermore, I think in places with the fires, with the droughts and everything, cattle does help, keeping the vegetation low in case you have big fires. And I think the most important thing to tell people is cattle in the Amazon is an absolute disaster, right? You have to cut down the forest to create the pastures. Here in Pantanal, if you do it properly, you don't have to cut one single tree to have cattle in your land, because all the floods and the water receding, that creates massive natural pastures that the cattle can be sustained on. So um, it's it's a lot more friendlier than having cattle in different parts of the world.
I
So
think,
it compromises. Go ahead, sorry.
sorry, for those of you that know me, I'm not a great fan of cattle. With
James
this
is speaking,
landscape,
by the way, yes.
I wasn't going to put it out there, but there you go. But The cattle have been in this landscape for 400 years. And I think Mario was telling me this morning about the interaction between the hyacinth macaw and cattle. And there is a palm tree, a palm fruit that the hyacinth macaw eat. Um, but because cattle have been on this landscape for so long, the hyacinth will now follow the cattle and eat the palm nuts after the cows have consumed them because they become softer and more edible. So removing the cattle from the landscape has a negative impact on the hyacinth macaw. So one of the things Mario is looking at is bringing back the traditional cattle that was on here, which is a breed that almost became extinct. So there is an opportunity here to look at original cattle species from the Pantanal, these large horned, short legged cattle, and not breeding them for industry or for production or food production, but rather reincorporating them back into the landscape to come back to some of those traditional approaches to cattle management in the Pantanal, which is interesting.
Yeah, we've been working now for 2 years with this particular species of cattle, which it's called the Pantanal cattle. It almost went extinct. There was only 1,000 head of this cattle left. And we're working with the University of the State of Mato Grosso do Sul to try to reintroduce it here in the system. And there's a few benefits, like you said, for the hyacinth macaws. But the other thing, and that's the main reason we started looking at it, is that the Nelore cattle, so the white cattle you see everywhere in Pantanal, if a jaguar attacks them, they each run to somewhere and the jaguar easily can catch one of them. With the Pantaneiro cattle, they have the behavior like buffaloes in Africa. So if a jaguar comes, they all get together and defend themselves. So the only reason people still, unfortunately, I don't know where, but I'm sure it happens, kill jaguars in Pantanal is because of the predation they suffer from jaguars. So if we had this kind of cattle, that wouldn't be a problem. So eventually could save jaguars. And I have to say, in the last 2 years that we've been working with it, I was telling James, we only lost one calf that went under the fence, and the other ones couldn't help it. But it's really effective, and again, another project we are involved in.
Before we run out of time, we've talked mostly about our past projects there and the current project that you're working on, but it seems like you have something of a vision for the future as well. Do you want to say a little bit more about that, Mario?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if Liz can put again the slide. So it's about where we are at the moment. So the Santa Teresa Reserve, again, that's the map of Pantanal. You can see further in the south, we've already done a corridor there. We've done another corridor in the north where we have a property that hosts the highest concentration of hyacinth macaws in the world. And pretty much in the Midwest there, it's where we have this Taquari project we just mentioned, and Santa Teresa, where we are at the moment. So this area where we are, it's 163,000 hectare land. We have a carbon credit project here, 50 miles or so of Pantanal River. And this land has been this family, if you can go to the next one, please, with this family for the last 20 years. And it's right there where you see this white pin. So this property is key to connecting this whole corridor to the state park that we're forming, the Taquari one, and also a good part to the Bolivian park. This will create a corridor the size of Switzerland, more or less. And it's very close to connecting the northern corridor to the middle corridor to the southern corridor. If you go to the next, please. And well, the next I'll tell you. and so this property has been with this family for 20 years, and they've put a big challenge to Onçafari. They want to preserve it in perpetuity. They see themselves as guardians of the land, but not owners of the land, and they want to see this place be preserved. And the challenge is that they will donate this land to Onçafari, so this huge amount of land, if as Onçafari and our partners, we can raise the same amount as the land is worth. And that that funds will be obviously to maintain this area in perpetuity, to help all the fire projects that in all the areas Onçafari owns across Brazil, improve all our projects. And so basically is, you know, moving Onçafari to let's say the next level. So we started working on this only 3 months ago, and yeah, this is the real project that, you know, once we finish the Taquari, that's the really one we're focusing on. I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to find such a generous family to donate this land, which is worth more or less $25 million. Donate that to Onçafari, and really for us it's a $50 million project. So it's something we're very excited, and I don't know, this place almost makes me cry of so beautiful and so preserved that it is.
Well, we look forward to thinking about that with you as we go forward.
Thank you, James.
We only have 3 more minutes. Let me ask each of you a final question. James, what has been the most inspiring moment since you landed in Brazil?
I think seeing the opportunity. You know, for 10 years, we've been talking about the Pantanal and what can happen here. And finally, things are aligning. I think over the next few years, with Mario and his team and the other conservationists working in the Pantanal, we can change what happens here forever. It's a special moment. So I hope we can grab it and ride that momentum.
Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. And Mario, you were a race car driver before, which must have been fun. Strengths and weaknesses of your 2 careers?
Yeah, I think being a race car driver taught me a lot of things that I still use today. You know, this competitive edge, making sure everything it's right in the minimal details, and putting a team together. I think is something I really loved and still love watching. Working with the team. Uh, the hard part, you sometimes you get hurt, but still have my legs and my arms, so it's all good. But I think in the end of the day, I think the big difference from what I used to do to what I do now is that I feel that what I did in the past was something, I don't know, a lot more selfish, where, you know, you wanting to win the race for you and your team, but not really leaving a big impact. I think what I do today, and when I founded Onçafari, I never expect to see the end of it. That's why we're so worried with the continuation, with endowment funds and everything. So it carries on for a long time. But the feeling is, you know, there it was kind of selfish. Here it's leaving a legacy for the next generations, and this is why I wake up every day thinking about that, and making sure all the animals are here, will be here for our great grandchildren to see.
Well, thank you both for joining us from there. I'm sure you would have rather been on the river seeing giant otters munching fish, or any of the other incredible things that you will see. How much longer are you there, James?
4 days,
Oh
5
my
days.
goodness. Well,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
deeply jealous, as I'm sure are everyone else who's joining here. To everybody who's joined us, thank you so much for taking the time out from your very busy schedules. It goes without saying that none